Coming up, we're going to revisit the Utah UFO video, War of the Worlds, and Aleister Crowley. Find out what they have in common next on Propellerhead. Hi, I'm Rob. This is Mark. Welcome to Propellerhead. We wanted to start off today with a revisit to the Beaver, Utah UFO video that I did. It got a lot of attention. You saw that, right?
Yes, I did.
I'm sure you read all of the comments.
Not all of them.
A lot of smart people on the internet.
Yes, yeah.
But I couldn't leave it without revisiting it based on having talked about the video from Spain. In the video from Spain, there were some people who said, look, you've covered some interesting things in this video that you didn't talk about in the previous video. Mm-hmm. Are you planning on going back and revisiting the Utah video? And so I couldn't not do that. And so I took a little visit to the park, took my little camera out there, and shot some test footage. You had a chance to see that, right?
I did, yeah. It looks to me like you're trying to prove, now I don't want to assume anything here, Rob, but yeah, you're trying to prove that it's actually not a spaceship, it's an insect.
It's a possibility that it can be something really small.
Yeah.
So what we did was we said in the previous video, we said the parallax shows that it can be really far away. Mm-hmm. So it definitely fit at a certain point. And for it to be really far away and then come across the lens the way it does, it's a big, fast-moving spaceship, 9,000 miles per hour.
Isn't that more exciting, though?
It is, and I think everybody wants it to be that.
Yeah.
But you got to look at everything. I mean, that's kind of our job, is we want to investigate closer and try to understand.
Well, you did the right thing by putting it on the internet, because obviously that's the hive mind.
Right.
And if anybody's going to work it out, it's going to be the smart people, much smarter than us,
right,
on the internet, right? So and I think the fact that it's had such positive feedback just goes to show, it's a testament, really,
right,
to how tricky this one is.
Yeah. Because
it's not instantly disprovable, as you did with the one in Spain, right? It was very easy to get to the bottom of that one, but with the Beaver, yeah, right,
But I just want to say, even with the Spain video, you know, these are just, I mean, we're still in the end just looking at a video, and we're making assumptions in some way.
Yeah.
We can never have all the facts, and it could still be something interesting. So, you know, I try to make sure in the comments when I had a chance to talk to people about what I had found, and I made the unfortunate mistake of saying bug too early to reference the fact that it does seem like something small and close to the lens, but it can still be something unique. It can still be something we haven't discovered yet. I mean, it definitely moves in an interesting way, and we don't see wings flapping on the Spain video. Right. So we can like roll a little bit of that, you know, so people are seeing which one we're talking about, for the people who haven't seen it. But anyway, why don't we take a quick look at what I did for in the park to show, you know, and then we'll get people's feedback on that.
Right. Let's do it.
All right. Hey guys, it's Rob here. So for those who haven't seen it, the Beaver, Utah UFO video was shot by a couple of drone operators that were flying their drone and caught what looks like an object traveling from a hillside about 2 miles away and flying past the drone at great speed. So it caused quite a stir, and I found it compelling myself. I also happened to notice an effect called parallax, which many of you may know about, and it's the way stationary objects move in the frame. And so I used that to try and establish that this object was really way back in the distance because it doesn't move with the foreground. And I thought that was going to be proof, but because it is not a stationary object and it is moving, it just is another thing to consider. So like everybody else, I wanted to consider other things and try to use the parallax along with other considerations to determine what this object was. So I decided to turn things on their side and look at it another way. And I changed the color scheme here a bit so that I could try and erase the background as much as I could. I wanted to get rid of that perception of the background and just look at how things move in the frame. And I wanted to see when this object appears, which is right there, does it move in the up and down direction the same way that this that the foreground does? Because we checked it going horizontally, but not the vertical direction. So I just turned it on its side to see it differently. And one of the things I noticed was that if you look at how far this arrow has traveled from the original line and this arrow from the original line, it's pretty similar. So what does that tell me? It tells me that the drone, as it moves up the hill, is causing all of the landscape to drop. And so if this object is closer to the lens than we think, maybe it's not flying down the mountainside, maybe it's actually just dropping in elevation as perceived by the drone, because it's closer to the lens and the drone is actually moving up. So the object isn't going anywhere. So now what do? Well, we've got the parallax locking this item into the background, this object into the background at a certain point, but then at a certain point, it seems to be moving. What if that object isn't actually moving forward very much? What if it's actually stationary? Have you noticed that it, again, if we use parallax, what is it tracking with now? Well, I wanted to see that a little bit better. So I did another view of this, and I stabilized the foreground, and I stabilized it on this bush here. And I made this bush and the foreground stay, or this tree, stay the same size. Now let me go through this again, now that the foreground is staying in place. And as I just move back and forth through that, is it possible that this is a tiny object closer to the lens that's actually, I mean, if we just draw a line straight down onto the plateau here behind the tree, you know, into the grass, is it possible that this is something tiny that's sort of floating on the air? So now consider this. So what if the point where it looked like it was tracking with the background, it's actually moving straight towards the drone, and it's slowly going out of sync with the drone. So it's traveling towards the drone, but actually if you look at this tree here, it's traveling towards the tree. So match it up as if it were traveling towards a tree, and as the drone moves past the tree, you can see the object continues to move towards the tree. And it seems to, right before it banks, it seems to continue to follow that path, right? So that's kind of interesting. It can be moving a small amount closer to the lens and tracking towards the tree before it actually changes directions. Now, why is this different than a bug? Well, it's the only thing we didn't try. It's looking at something that's actually smaller than a bug. There was a problem, and this is why we didn't look at it, is a bug and things that are small are too small to see from a distance. Because you gotta remember, this drone is traveling forward at 28 miles per hour or 41 feet per second. So in 1 second, this drone travels 41 feet. You know, that's going pretty fast. So it means that when we first see this thing way back on the hillside there, it's at least 41 feet away because it's a second away, but it's probably even further, right? Because it never reaches the drone. So in order for something to be visible that far away, it has to be relatively big, and a bug that far away is too small to see. Or is it? That's what we want to look at. Can we see something small that far away? So I made a target, and I'll give you a little bit better view of it. There it is there. I've got 1 inch squares, 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch squares there. And then of course a 6 inch bar on the side. And down at the bottom, the 1, 1/2 and 1/4 inch squares in both black and white. So also on the top here, you can see that I've got a 3/8 of an inch white sphere, and which is a little bit smaller than the 1/2 inch squares. And then I have a 1 1/2 inch ping pong ball. So what did I do? Well, I took those things to the park, and I set up my camera at the park, and I set up a little scenario where I could change the focal length of my camera and get some example shots to show you guys. So the first thing I did was I actually took the target all the way back to 100 feet. So from 100 feet, I wanted to be able to show you, what this thing looked like. And that would be about what the drone could travel at in about 2 seconds. So here's my setup at 100 feet. And as you can see, that's a good reference for us. And I can zoom in on that and show you that at 100 feet, you're not going to see a whole lot of detail. So this is zoomed in 800%. All right, I also shot this target at 50 feet. And 50 feet, it's nice to see that we do get a little bit more detail. And I can zoom in on that one as well. And now we can see some separation between the black and the white squares. And hardly can pick up those little 1/4 inch squares. I made the mistake of setting this up against the sidewalk here, but I can almost pick out the white, the 3/8 inch ball on that side, and then there's the ping pong ball. So I did set up one other test. I wanted to set up so that I was all the way backlit and run a test with something really small. So I like the small things that I have on the target, but it's really hard to get the effect of being backlit by the sun with the paper target. So I tried something a little bit different. I cut a small piece of feather and tied it to a weight, a little steel ring, so that I could put this tiny little feather in front of the camera. And if you average it out, it's about 1/8 of an inch. I hope you can tell there. So what I did, though, was I also wanted to exaggerate the field of view just a little bit. And instead of shooting at this field of view, which is equivalent to what the drone footage was shot at, I actually shot it wider at about 28 millimeters. Whenever I do that, you get something that looks more like this. So as you can tell, that's exaggerated quite a bit, how far and how small things are going to be. So now, if I can see something that far down that's small and white, that tells me that it is possible for something really tiny and really reflective or bright to be within 1 second's range of the drone. So I tested that. So I took my white feather and even put a butterfly on there because we were still considering the whole butterfly, dark and light colored, and I ran through it. So this is me walking all the way down. There's 40 feet. Pretty cool. There we got 4 feet, 8 feet. I'm calling them out, and although you guys can't hear it. And there's 10 feet. You got to make the butterflies fly, of course. There's 20 feet. Don't worry, I'm going to pause here in just a second because I do have something I want to show you. But I want to wait until we get all the way down to the end, right there. Now, I was pretty impressed by this. Now, this is a wider angle. This is a tiny little 1/8 of an inch. It's 50 feet away. And let me zoom in for you guys here. Can you see that? Well, that was pretty special to me because that let me know that you can actually see something tiny that's far away because of, and we got some bug friends too, because of something called diffraction. What's happening is the bright sun is causing a blooming effect on this tiny object because light is being diffracted in multiple directions, and that's picked up by the camera. Now we can especially see that because it's against a dark background, and we have that same effect in the Beaver, Utah video. It's not necessary for it to be against a dark background for us to still see it, but it's a lot harder for us to perceive it when it's not against the dark background. So the fact that I could see that, and by the way, we're zoomed in here almost 700% so that we could see that. And if you look at the board, I just want to call your attention to this. There's a 1/4 of an inch dot somewhere over there that's white that you really can't even see, right? And there's the 1/2 inch that looks about like the 1/8 of an inch fuzzy thing that we're taking a picture of here. But things are so blurred out because it doesn't resolve at the distance, but yet we can still see it. And so this is a real world practical test that helps us learn how to analyze these things in the future. You know, logic tells us we wouldn't be able to see it. We can't see a bug that far. Look, if we had a dark colored bug, it would barely be perceptible, right? But the light reflecting off of it makes it diffract and therefore makes it more visible. I also want to point out our butterfly here. Why is the butterfly not a good example? Well, because look how large it is. We need that butterfly to be, 4 times smaller in order for it to be to match the video. But yet it's just too big in the frame. So that's why it can't be a butterfly that we're seeing. It has to be something really tiny. I'm not saying that it's not supernatural. I'm not saying that it's not still a bug of some sort. What I'm saying is that it has to be, in this test, it has to be something tiny. And I'm able to see that. So that's really important. So there's our object, really, really tiny. Again, we're looking at the distorted view, right? And so you have to say, does this thing look like something that might be, closer to the lens, right? Closer to the lens. And how would it go past the camera? If it wasn't a bug or something flying, then how would it actually move past the camera? Well, I actually looked into the weather. I checked the weather for the time that they were there. And you may be surprised to know that the wind was really high. 39 was the max wind speed from one website. Farmer's Almanac, checking for the same date, had a little bit more detail. Average wind speed of 23 and a sustained wind. That means something that blows for more than a few seconds of almost 37 miles per hour. I mean, that's really significant. That's not just a casual walk in the park day there. That's a lot of wind. And then 50 mile per hour gust. That's like being on the highway. So, that's a lot of wind. And these guys said that they had a headwind. I believe in one interview they mentioned there being about 17 to 20 mile per hour that they noticed. And if it was a headwind, that means that the drone was flying into it. And yes, it could cause things to fly towards the drone. So it doesn't mean it has to be something that was navigating on its own. Now, again, this is me investigating possibilities. I'm not telling you what this was. I don't know what it was. So this is possibilities. So are there any, things that could occur in nature that would match something that would be able to just float in the air like that and be blown towards the camera? Well, this guy says there probably is. And as we know, there's some of those guys around, and there's some of this stuff around. The aspen, the poplar, and the cottonwood trees all have some pretty cool stuff. Here's another view of something like that. It just floats in the air. Now, am I saying that's what it is? I don't know. I mean, spiderweb even floats in the air. It's pretty cool how these things happen in nature. So I'm not saying that's what it is. I just think that it's neat that we've looked at this another way and we found another possible explanation for how something like that could occur. Does it mean that it's not a craft traveling 9,000 miles per hour? Of course it doesn't. So in the end, I just want to say, I think we've shown that there is another possibility that we have to consider, that this is something really tiny and really close to the lens. Looking at it in slow motion, it does seem to have a cinematic effect to it, but when you look at it at real speed, I think it is possible that this is much closer. We would be able to see it because it's bright white and it blows past the lens with the wind in the air. Now, it doesn't mean that that's what I think it is. It just means that that is a possibility that I find hard to rule out right now. It is something that is organic. It changes shape. So it does tend to say maybe this isn't a fixed structural craft that's flying by. But honestly, I remain compelled by this video, and I will consider it forever one of my top videos to reference. So thank you very much again, and we'll get back to the show. What'd you think of that?
Well, I can see how it could be a bug, but I'm still going for it's a spaceship.
I like
traveling 9,000 miles per hour.
Right.
Maybe 12,000.
I couldn't walk that fast. I tried to speed it up.
I know, but you could fast forward, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the thing, right? As with religion, everybody, when it comes to UFOs, everyone is agnostic because no one really knows. That's my opinion anyway, right? Yeah. Everyone has a theory about religion or about do UFOs exist? Are they man-made? Are they interdimensional? Where do they come from, right? What are they observing us? Do they have a mission?
Right.
So I'm interested in not do they exist, because as we're seeing in the media, even mainstream media, you can, even on any given night on Fox, they're now showing UFO videotape, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, or you just go on YouTube and there's UFOs flying alongside, passenger planes. So it seems to be introduced into.
But in the media, oftentimes there's an ounce of ridicule thrown in at the end. No matter what they show, there's just that little laugh or that little joke that happens at the end.
But I think that's because they have to still appeal to the skeptics. Because at the end of the day, it's about viewers, right? So if they have to try and be on the fence somewhat, but the fact that it's getting airtime, the fact that they're actually showing it in the first place speaks volumes. And I think that's happening more and more in the last few years. And this would segue into what you call, the disclosure project that's been threatened, right? They keep saying this year we're going to disclose. Right. This year the government, it was Obama. Obama was going to tell the world UFOs exist, right? And aliens exist, and we're doing deals with them. So it's like, getting back to my original point, it's not really about do they exist, because we won't know for sure until we literally lands and you step inside it, and even then, is it man-made? And I wanted to talk about the origin story of UFOs. Okay. Because I find that interesting in itself.
Before we depart from that, because you hit on a great point, is the fact that UFOs are becoming something that's being put in front of us to say, hey, maybe you need to worry about this.
Yeah.
Maybe I should I not bring up the new Tom DeLonge show?
Maybe if you want.
We can talk about that. We'll reference that.
Yeah.
So is the new, what's the name of it? I've forgotten now. Is it
unidentified?
Unidentified. I think that's it. We'll fix it if that isn't it. Interestingly, they're talking about, and Luis Elizondo, they're talking about the fact that they are a threat. That ET, these unknown craft are a threat. They pose a threat to us.
Yeah.
And how? And apparently they've got information we don't have.
Right.
Because we've not been told to be worried. But it seems like that's what this show.
Well, it depends which movie you watch, right?
Well, but those are intentionally fictional.
Well, yeah, but they're also telegraphing a new reality.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do. I know what you mean.
It's like, they're planting the seeds where. If they can instill fear, you've got ETs, you've got the good guys, you've got the bad guys. Are they benevolent? Are they going to help us? Are they taking care of us? Are we just an experiment to them? Right? Yeah. There's all these theories flying around on the internet, and I think that's part of the trick, right? There's so much disinformation that you're naturally confused, and so this is why, again, getting back, honestly, in my opinion, the History Channel. Yeah. When they did, what was the one, Aliens?
Ancient Aliens?
Ancient Aliens. Yeah. A lot of that has been disproved, right? Yeah. A lot of the images, so I think if there is any kind of agenda going on mainstream, what's the word? Thought. Oh God, no, I don't want to say psyop, but anything that's actually trying to prepare us or condition us. And certainly distract us. Yeah. I think something like the History Channel is going to be in on it. They're part of that mainstream agenda setting process. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think you can see that when I did a bit of digging on the internet, and I double checked or triple checked. There's some really good resources out there. There's a lot of original citations that you can go to. There's a lot of original documents. That you can actually see, and so from my understanding, and I did do some research, but the origin story of are you willing to go there now? The origin story?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about him a bit more?
I was just curious about this. I think people might be interested in this show because it's going to pop up.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about I think they tie in.
They do. They tie absolutely. It's all part of the same thing.
Let's run this real quick. This is a History Channel. Clip.
I put my entire career on the line because I believe in what I believe in. They tracked 100 of these things. This is real. Wake up.
Yeah. So here again, it seems like wake up. They're tracking these things. You gotta watch out.
Yeah.
I just feel like I can't remember who it was that it was part of that disclosure project with Stephen Greer. One of the, I want to say her name's Barbara. I can't think of her name right now. She says there's going to be different military events planned.
Yeah.
And they're going to go to, they're going to go to the Middle East, and they're going to handle everything in the Middle East. It's going to be Iraq, and then Iran, and Syria, and then they're going to do North Korea, and then the final thing will be ET.
Right.
We'll be battling against ET.
So that to me is like, what is the end game?
Right.
Right. So if you do track it back to its origin and then bring it to its present day, what is the end game? Like, why bother? Why put so much time, energy, and resources into messing with the public's mind? Right? Or controlling the public's mind. Like, what's the end result? What do they want? Right?
Yeah.
Everyone has an agenda.
Yeah.
And like, it's like this guy, Tom DeLonge.
Yeah.
And anyone that's in his show, the first thing I would say is find out, do a little bit of digging on that person, right? What did their parents do for a living? That usually tells you a lot.
Oh boy.
Right? If you go 1 degree back and their parents were in Intel, or in the military at a very high level, you'll be shocked. Jim Morrison's father was an admiral, right?
Yeah.
In the Navy at the Gulf of Tonkin, right?
Wow.
He was there, and he was the guy basically running the show. That's very interesting to me. And there's a lot of those things. A lot of people are connected. They're 1 degree away. A lot of children have parents who were in the intelligence agencies, and they could be in the MI6 in the UK, or they could be connected to the CIA here in America. It's, that's what I would say. It's like, who is it? Who's talking? Do you trust them? What's their agenda? Find out who their parents were, if possible. It's not that difficult these days. And you start to see more of the truth. And this was the thing I picked up on the origin here. You're familiar with the War of the Worlds and Orson Welles, right?
Right, but I think you're going to talk about some stuff that's pretty cool and I don't think I knew about that. I mean, I'd always heard that War of the Worlds was an experiment in a way, and that almost seemed like, well, that's conspiracy theory to say it was a test to see how was America going to react. Especially it was a long time ago, but was it in the 50s? It was in
1938.
38.
Yeah. Okay. So it was before, and they even did but the people that actually were behind that were actual Princeton University.
Yeah.
So it was the Princeton Radio Princeton Radio Research Project. They were funded to understand how people reacted using different media, right?
Yeah.
So obviously radio was the #1 medium at that time.
Yeah.
We since went into TV. Obviously now it's streaming.
Yeah.
Where is it going to end up?
But everybody was on the big box radios.
Exactly, exactly. And so this was a perfect situation to not only see if they could induce panic and fear in their audience, but then they could talk about the fear and actually make no matter how real the fear was or how big the numbers were, the hysteria, they can then talk about the hysteria, which becomes a story in and of itself. Do you see what I mean? So
Sure I do.
Right. So let's just say they say, Orson Welles did War of the Worlds, 1938.
Because there was a radio report about something that happened in Germany.
Yeah.
At the time, which did freak a lot of people out.
There were some riots in the streets. Okay. Yeah. I think in Munich.
So when people heard War of the Worlds, there were a lot of people who thought, well, this isn't really.
They connected the two, right? Yeah. But this is where it gets interesting, because War of the Worlds, which was written by H.G. Wells, right?
Yeah.
This is where you start going down that rabbit hole. The War of the Worlds, written by H.G. Wells, he was mentored by Sir Thomas Huxley, right?
Oh, okay.
Sir Thomas Huxley is the father of Aldous Huxley,
right,
who wrote Brave New World, right? Years later. H.G. Wells was Aldous Huxley's mentor and teacher.
Should I get a piece of chalk and
seriously, it's like you have to draw this. This is why you realize it's all connected, and it goes back to a few people. So if you start with H.G. Wells in 1938, then you have the Foo Fighters of World War II, right? So there's a timeline here of UFOs being spotted, and that's a whole other, a completely different rabbit hole we could go down. Yeah. But then, if I had to say what was the biggest story that was ever covered when it really became mainstream, and that would probably be, was it
Roswell crash?
No, Roswell.
Before that, you said?
No, it was actually after that when it was talking about alien abductions.
Okay, so, but what story?
Betty and Bernie Hill.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember those guys? And that was like 62. Right. If my memory serves me right. Yeah. So when you have, and that was Interrupted Journey, right? So there was a book written about that. I think the guy was called Fuller, who wrote that. And this is when it started to become mainstream, and this is when the grey.
The Interrupted Journey. Let's go here. Let's go to Wikipedia.
Yeah, there you go. That trusted source.
The trusted source.
Yeah.
Interrupted Journey. Directed. Oh, this is the film. Are you talking about a book?
Yeah, it was originally a book. Yeah.
Are you sure it was a book?
Yeah, just write Fuller.
Oh. Interrupted Journey.
Can edit this out, can't we, Rob?
Hey, Fuller. John G. Fuller.
There you go.
You're right.
There you go.
Did not know that.
So, and he's the one that really put them on the map.
Yeah.
And it became mainstream. But what gets more... Are you familiar with the work of Aleister Crowley?
Only vaguely.
Right.
It's not a regular reading thing for me.
So do you know who he is?
Yeah.
So he basically...
Wasn't he Manson's...
mentor, and also LaVey, who founded the Church of Satan. Okay. So this guy was basically Luciferian, satanic. He had his own religion called Thelema, which he channeled whilst in Egypt. A lot of the modern day celebrities follow him. It's do what thou wilt. So Jay-Z, his whole fashion brand is do what thou wilt, based on that philosophy, which is interesting in itself. But he says that he was visited by an interdimensional being, which he drew a picture of, which you might want to bring up because it's worth looking at. And it identified itself, Lamb. So Aleister Crowley.
Oh, Crowley said.
Yeah. And he got his information from Lamb. And he sketched out an image.
Visited by...
LAM, just Lamb.
I'll put being. What should I try?
I mean, if you type in Lamb and images...
Oh. Boy, he's one attractive guy, isn't he?
Yep.
By...
LAM. No, just LAM, not Lamb as in...
the name of the being was Lamb?
Yeah, that's how it called itself, Lamb. Or there you go. Now, what does that look like to you?
An ass.
Right? or a grey alien.
Yeah, for sure. Wow.
So now you start to see the pattern, right? So,
all right, I think this is a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe we should take a moment.
Okay.
We're going to take a break.
Yeah.
And be right back with more of this amazingness. Great. All right.
Well, I was talking about Lamb and Aleister Crowley and how Lamb looks very similar to what we would call a grey alien now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you connect that to all of the abduction stories and all of the UFO sightings that we're having today. And like, you've got to ask yourself, where is this all going, right? There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of confusion. Yeah. No one really knows for sure. There's a lot of video evidence. Is it our military, and they've created technology that they're just not telling us about, and they're zipping around at 9,000 miles per hour, which may be, what we've seen with your last video. Yeah. And it's just like, to me, one of the theories, when you look at people like, you mentioned the Von Braun, is it Dr. Carol Rosin?
Carol Rosin.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's pull that up.
Yeah, there you go. Let's have a look. And she obviously talks about the warning that there's going to be the final conclusion to all of this, or the end game, is going to be
I was hoping it was in the text.
Creating what you could really say, creating a new religion or creating a new god. Because if an alien ship comes out of nowhere and hovers over the White House...
Oops. Sorry, I played that already.
Yeah.
Let's see. You want to watch this real quick? Let's see.
Yeah.
All right. See if we can get to the point where she says... The final warning.
Person to appear on occasions when he was too ill to weapons in space. Why they're a dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, was a repetitive sentence that he said to me over and over again during the approximately 4 years that I had the opportunity of working with him. And that was the strategy that was being used to educate the public and decision makers.
Yeah.
And the scare tactics, the spin that was being put on a weapons system. And that was how we identify an enemy. The enemy, at first he said, the enemy against whom we're going to build a space-based weapon system that he thought was a ridiculous idea, unnecessary and very dangerous, not to mention too costly, etc. The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74,
they're already the enemy now, again.
Yeah.
Enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons.
Space-based weapons.
And the next enemy was
Well,
asteroids.
been told of any of those.
Now,
Trump.
at this point, he kind of chuckled the first
Space
time
Force.
he said it.
Yeah.
Asteroids. Against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons.
Well, they're doing that.
It was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card.
So
And over and
there it is.
over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie.
that is so spooky to me. That just creeps me out. And what you're saying is that that's what we're being shown right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's just a theory. Like I say, I'm agnostic, right? I don't know. I only can have a theory like everyone else. And there's so much information out there on the internet, as we know, and there's so much disinformation.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, I would say I would stick to my rule. Find out who Carol Rosin is.
That's true.
Who were her parents?
Yeah.
Well, how did she end up working with von Braun in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? You know, everyone has an agenda. So find out what that agenda is.
Yeah.
And then make, you know,
That's our job.
Step back.
That's what we do here.
Exactly. And
So
using the trivium method.
We're going to do
right?
that. What's the trivium?
So basically, the trivium message is something that I was taught, I was taught in school. You basically...
Okay, hold up a second. We talked way too long about this. The trivium method is basically a really complicated way of explaining something that you probably do already without even realizing it. It basically means 1, when you're considering new information, you first discern what are the raw facts. Then 2, ask yourself why. Then 3, of course, you formulate a way to understand it and then share it. The way we share information can easily be colored by deceptive language and propaganda, so basically boiling things down in this way helps you see through the crap. Okay, let's forward through this part. Yeah.
And so my thing is, it's about whittling everything down as much as possible to the truth and as close as you can ever get to that. So the end game here just might be, and like I said, I don't know, but the evidence does point towards there's an end game which is leading us to this event, and it may be using mixed reality. It's obviously, you know, now with technology as advanced as it is, we're no longer at the stage of you know, War of the Worlds on radio. Now, can we create these, you know, these virtual or mixed reality illusions?
Or get the voice in our head.
Exactly, the voice of God, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So they start to get you in a position where you will now start to give up your rights, right? That's the big fear, right? Yeah. It's like you say, okay, now there's something outside of humanity coming from outer space. It's a major threat,
right?
And you give all of your power over to the government. Yeah, you know, and this could be a conspiracy theory, right? It's like, you know, this is the end game, but it does fit. Like, logically, that would be one reason for why they're doing this, why they're spending so much money. And this has been a long game for them. Yeah. I mean, we're talking hundreds of years. So they've got to this point.
So would you say researching this and trying to, working to understand UFOs and unexplained and keep the power and the knowledge in the hands of the people is a good way to combat against that? To not be fooled by...
Definitely. Well, I think it wakes people up for a start, right? If you start to understand that these are the tricks, these are the tools they use, and a lot of it is based on disinformation, distraction, and obviously having you be in a fearful place. That's always, you know, when you're in fear, that's obviously a place of weakness, right? You're not your strongest self. Right. So I think if they can confuse you, then they can control you. And if you're in fear, you're a lot more malleable, right? Wow. And I think there's a lot of that going on, a lot of the disinformation. So when you see stuff on Fox or CNN, and you see these lights in the sky, or you see these spaceships flying next to a passenger plane, you've got to ask yourself why. Why is it coming out now? Why are they showing it? What's really going on? Like, you know, is it just control? Are they controlling us through the media? And these are all good questions to ask, I think. Yeah.
So I have a feeling we're going to get into more in our next episode about these connections, which is really cool. Yes. But how they relate to the tangible things that we can all take advantage of. Like, sharing information is the most important piece. Yes. And so I think that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to take this amazing things that people are sharing on the internet and experiences people have. Exactly. And actually trying to learn something from them and then share all those pieces. Yeah. So it's not trapped.
That's right. And the more, I mean, this is the thing. Don't take my word for it. Yeah. Don't take your word for it. Right. It's about doing your own research. Yeah. Right? Digging deep. Disproving.
Well, but we can't all go to the mud library.
That's right. So, but you can find something that contradicts it, or you can find somebody else who has who has a very strong story. I mean, this is the great thing about the hive mind of YouTube or the internet, right? Yeah. Yeah. You put something out there, and if it is a lie, it doesn't take long for somebody to contradict it, or even if it's not like an intentional lie, it's just bad information. Yeah. Somebody else can go, well, actually, this happened and this happened, and you've had that with the comments, right? On your video. It's like people have said, what about this? And it makes you get better. It fine tunes. And so anything we talk about today should be examined. Yeah. It should be put to the test of the trivium method. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if someone can come back with, well, actually, you've only got a thread of the truth there, this is what really happened, we all get better and we all start to wake up.
That's fantastic. All right, we should end on that. Yeah. Thanks everyone for visiting us for this inaugural first episode of Propellerhead, and we look forward to seeing you back for the second episode, where we will just blow your minds with something even better than today.
Let's hope so. All right, thank you guys.
See ya.
See ya.